Back in the day, medieval farmers grew all kinds of weird and wonderful fruits, ones you've probably never heard of because modern farming just forgot about them. It's time to bring back these 15 lost medieval fruits, and trust me, they deserve a second chance. Let's kick things off with the medlar, a forgotten fruit with possibly the most unfortunate nickname in food history, open arse. I'm not making this up. Medieval people really called it that because of how it looks. This strange little fruit was a winter superstar when medieval farmers had basically nothing else growing. Imagine walking through snow to pick something that looks like a small brown apple crossed with a rosehip. Here's the weird part. You can't eat medlars when they're freshly picked. They need to be bledded first, which is a fancy way of saying let them rot a bit. You harvest them after the first frost, then leave them in a cool place until they turn soft and brown, looking pretty much exactly like overripe fruit you'd normally throw away. The taste? Absolutely worth the wait. It's like apple butter mixed with dates, cinnamon, and wine all wrapped up in one bite. Medieval people went crazy for them. Even Shakespeare and Chaucer couldn't stop writing about medlars, though usually making those obvious jokes about the fruit's appearance. If food hipsters discovered medlars today, they'd be charging $15 for medlar jam on artisanal toast. And honestly, it might be worth it. While medlars were the winter champions of medieval fruit, they weren't the only forgotten treasures that kept farmers fed throughout the changing seasons. The sorb apple might have apple in its name, but this medieval fruit is actually more related to the mountain ash tree. Truth in advertising wasn't exactly a medieval priority. These are the same people who called whale sea beef on Fridays to avoid religious meat restrictions. Medieval farmers didn't care about botanical technicalities, though. They cared about flavor, and sorb apples delivered big time. What made sorb apples special? They were the secret weapon in medieval cider making. When added to regular apples during fermentation, sorb apples gave drinks an extra kick and depth that modern ciders can only dream about. The small, firm fruits contain natural tannins and unique sugars that created complex flavors without any fancy equipment. The Romans first documented sorb apples, but medieval farmers took them to the next level. In parts of England and France, certain villages became famous specifically for their sorb-infused ciders. Some medieval tax records actually show farmers paying their lords with jugs of this special cider instead of coins. Sorry I can't pay my taxes this year, but have you tried this amazing drink? Is apparently an excuse that actually worked in medieval times. Medieval drinking games probably went something like, take a sip every time the plague comes to town. But at least they had great cider while waiting it out. The sorb apple nearly vanished after the 1700s when newer apple varieties took over. Today, only a handful of traditional orchards still grow these forgotten fruits, mostly in remote parts of Europe where old ways die hard. While the sorb apple gave drinks their kick, another medieval fruit was so valuable it became a form of actual currency in local markets. The humble service tree looks unremarkable today, but during medieval times these trees were treated like living banks. People protected these trees better than modern banks guard their vaults, and with good reason. A single mature tree could feed a family for months. What made these fruits worth their weight in gold? Patience and preservation. Service trees take up to 30 years before they produce their first harvest, practically forever in medieval terms, when people rarely lived past 40. Once the trees finally produced fruit, the reward was incredible. Small brown pear-shaped fruits that could last for months without rotting in an era with no refrigeration. The fruits start out hard as rocks and inedible. After harvesting, they were stored in straw until they softened and developed a taste similar to dates mixed with baked apples. This long-lasting quality made service fruits extremely valuable through winter when food became scarce. Service trees were such prized possessions that they appeared in family wills and property deeds. Medieval court records show actual disputes over who owned specific trees, with judges sometimes splitting the yearly harvest between feuding families. While service trees provided lasting winter fruit, medieval monks preferred another forgotten fruit. Monastery gardens across medieval Europe grew cornelian cherry trees not for their beauty, but for their bright red fruits that could save lives. Despite its name and appearance, the cornelian cherry isn't related to regular cherries at all. It's actually from the dogwood family. These small, ruby-colored fruits ripened in late summer when many other fruits were already gone. Medieval monks became experts at using them for medicine, treating everything from stomach problems to fevers. The fruits are packed with vitamin C, which help fight off the common cold and scurvy long before anyone understood what vitamins were. Medieval medicine had some truly terrible ideas, like drilling holes in people's heads to release evil spirits, but using cornelian cherries was one of their rare good calls. The tart taste made cornelian cherries perfect for preserves and syrups that could be stored year-round in the monastery infirmaries. Records from the 9th century show that Charlemagne himself ordered these trees planted throughout his empire specifically for their health benefits. What made these fruits special was their versatility. Beyond medicine, the extremely hard wood from cornelian cherry trees was used to make tools, weapons, and even parts for medieval crossbows. A single tree provided both healing fruits and wood strong enough to make weapons. Talk about medieval multitasking. While monks treasured cornelian cherries for healing the sick, another forgotten fruit faced quite the opposite reputation. Barberry bushes with their bright red berries once filled medieval gardens before becoming the target of history's strangest plant ban. These tart little fruits were outlawed because people believed they caused wheat rust, a fungal disease that ruined grain crops. The medieval logic was flawless. This plant grows near our fields. Our wheat is sick. Clearly, the plant is a witch. Case closed. The irony? Barberry actually does host wheat rust. Medieval farmers were basically agricultural detectives without the cool hats and magnifying glasses. They figured this out centuries before modern science confirmed it. Before the bans, barberry was a kitchen superstar. The sour berries added punch to medieval sauces, particularly for game meats. Cooks used them much like we use cranberries today, to cut through rich, fatty foods with bright acidity. Medieval recipe books might as well have read, Step 1, kill something with a bow. Step 2, add barberries. Step 3, serve to the Lord who hasn't brushed his teeth in decades. Many villages kept 1 or 2 barberry bushes safely away from wheat fields, treating them like valuable but dangerous treasures. The fruits were worth the risk for their medicinal properties. They contain berberine, a compound that really does fight infections. While barberry struggled under its unfair reputation, another forgotten fruit was valued precisely because it appeared when none were expected. The first taste of sweetness after a long winter came from nespoli, or loquats as we call them today. These golden fruits arrived when medieval pantries were at their emptiest, making them worth their weight in actual gold. What makes nespoli truly special? They ripen when every other fruit tree was just starting to flower. Their unusual growing cycle meant they bloomed in autumn, survived winter as tiny green fruits, and ripened in early spring when food was most scarce. Medieval calendar makers should have marked the seasons as winter, still winter, nespoli time, and finally summer. The taste was unlike anything else available in medieval Europe, a unique mix of peach, mango, and citrus flavors, all from a fruit that grew in cold climates. For people used to bland winter foods, biting into a ripe loquat must have felt like pure magic. Nespoli trees originally came from China, but spread across the Mediterranean by the 10th century. Monasteries and castle gardens prized these trees not only for their early fruits, but also for their medicinal leaves, which were brewed into teas for cough and lung problems. The trees themselves became status symbols. A lord or lady with nespoli trees showed they could afford exotic imports and had the skilled gardeners needed to keep them alive through harsh winters. Having a nespoli tree in medieval times was like having the only ice cream shop open in winter. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be your friend. While nespoli brightened early spring, another forgotten fruit had traveled even further to reach medieval tables. From the dusty markets of ancient China to the tables of medieval Europe, jujubes traveled farther than most medieval people ever did. These small fruits, somewhere between dates and apples in taste, were tough enough to survive trade routes spanning thousands of miles. Medieval gardeners loved jujubes because they were basically the zombie plants of the fruit world. Nothing could kill them. The Black Death wiped out half of Europe, but couldn't touch these stubborn little fruits. Fresh jujubes were eaten like apples, starting crisp but developing a chewy, date-like texture as they dried naturally on the tree. This self-preserving quality made them valuable as travel food for knights and pilgrims making long journeys. Medieval travel food options were basically dried meat that could break teeth, bread that could break teeth, or jujubes, which at least wouldn't break your teeth. Medieval dentistry consisted of just pull it out, so this was a big selling point. Traditional healers treasured jujubes for treating insomnia and anxiety, brewing the fruits into syrups and teas. Medieval candy makers also dried and sugared jujubes to create sweets that lasted months without spoiling. So popular that jujube eventually became the name for certain candies with no actual fruit in them. While jujubes traveled the Silk Road to reach Europe, another forgotten fruit had a much closer connection to silk production. Mulberry trees were planted everywhere in medieval Europe, but not for their juicy dark berries. They were grown to feed hungry silkworms. Silk production was a massive medieval industry, and silkworms refused to eat anything except mulberry leaves. No mulberry trees meant no silk, which meant no fancy clothes for the rich and powerful. Kings would literally go to war over silk, but the worms that made it were pickier eaters than a 5-year-old at a vegetable market. The silk connection made mulberry trees mandatory for any region wanting to participate in the lucrative trade. Italy and France had laws requiring landowners to plant specific numbers of mulberry trees based on their property size. Some places even taxed people who cut down mulberry trees without permission. The happy side effect? Tons of delicious berries that stained everything purple. Medieval nobles quickly realized they had an abundance of fruit and began using mulberries in wines, pies, and preserves. The berries ripened gradually over weeks rather than all at once, providing a steady supply through summer. Medieval laundry tip: never wear your best white tunic while picking mulberries unless you want to look like you've been attacked by a grape monster. The dark juice became a food coloring for everything from sauces to wines. It also made excellent ink for writing. Some medieval manuscripts were written with mulberry ink that still holds its color today, over 700 years later. While Europeans valued mulberries primarily for silk production, Native Americans across the Atlantic had been cultivating their own superfruit for centuries. Could a tiny berry help medieval communities survive harsh winters? The Saskatoon berry certainly did. These small blue-purple fruits might look like blueberries, but they packed an even bigger nutritional punch that made them essential to both European settlers and indigenous peoples. Saskatoon berries contain more protein, fat, and fiber than most fruits, making them a genuine medieval superfood. A single cup provided enough energy to keep working for hours during the brutal farming days when most people needed 4,000 calories just to get through their daily chores. Medieval health advice was usually things like try leeches or drink this mystery potion, but eating Saskatoon berries was actually good guidance. The berries grew wild across northern Europe and were later introduced to monastery gardens because of their reliability. Even in years when frost killed other crops, Saskatoon bushes stubbornly produced fruit. This dependability meant the difference between feast and famine in many remote communities. What made them truly special was their preservation quality. The berries could be dried and stored for years without losing their nutritional value. Many villages kept emergency stores of dried Saskatoons to ward off starvation during crop failures or sieges. Medieval winemakers particularly valued Saskatoon berries for creating sweet, high-alcohol content wines that kept well. The natural sugars fermented beautifully, creating drinks that warm bodies during cold winter months. The wine was so strong that medieval drinking songs about Saskatoon brew warned that 3 cups would have you talking to angels, or thinking you were one. While Saskatoon berries kept bodies healthy, another forgotten fruit was believed to keep evil spirits away. Fear drove medieval farmers to plant rowan trees more than any practical purpose. These trees, with their bright red berries, stood guard over homes, barns, and village squares across Europe, believed to offer magical protection against witches and evil spirits. Every part of the rowan tree had its place in medieval superstition. Branches were hung over doorways on May Day. Walking sticks made from rowan wood supposedly protected travelers on dark roads. Even the shape of the tiny star at the bottom of each berry was seen as a natural pentagram, a symbol of protection. Medieval home security systems consisted of one angry dog, a pointy stick, and several strategically placed rowan trees. Surprisingly effective against both bandits and witches. The berries themselves are intensely bitter when raw, so bitter that even birds avoid eating them until after the first frost softens and sweetens them. Medieval cooks discovered that cooking transformed these bitter berries into something delicious. Rowan berry jam became a winter staple, often paired with game meats or stirred into porridge. The high pectin content meant the berries easily formed thick preserves without adding extra ingredients. The preserves contained massive amounts of vitamin C, helping prevent scurvy during winter months. In northern regions, the berries were fermented into a strong spirit called rowan berry schnapps that burned going down but warmed you from the inside. Folk medicine claimed this drink could cure colds, rheumatism, and sore throats. Medieval drinking logic: if it burns your throat going down, it must be killing the illness too. Medical science wasn't exactly advanced. While rowan berries were too bitter to eat fresh, another forgotten medieval fruit was so sour, too sour to eat was the first thought of anyone biting into a sloe berry. These small blue-black fruits grew on thorny blackthorn bushes throughout medieval Europe and would turn your mouth inside out if eaten raw. Yet despite their face-puckering sourness, sloes were harvested by the basketful every autumn. Why gather fruit too sour to eat? Because medieval people discovered something magical. Steeping sloes in alcohol created a delicious drink that would eventually evolve into modern sloe gin. The process was simple. Prick the berries, add them to spirits, then wait several months while the alcohol slowly extracted flavor, color, and sweetness. Medieval bartending school was basically, is it poisonous? No? Put it in alcohol and see what happens. Sloe happened to be one of their better experiments. Blackthorn hedges served double duty in medieval farming. The dense, thorny bushes created natural fencing that kept livestock contained while producing useful fruit. The wood was so hard and durable that it became the standard material for making cudgels and walking sticks. The berries had serious medicinal uses too. Sloe tonics treated everything from upset stomachs to fever. The high vitamin C content made by sloe preserves valuable winter medicine when fresh fruits are unavailable. Some medieval hospitals maintained special blackthorn gardens specifically for making remedies. Most fascinating was the timing ritual. Tradition held that sloes should only be harvested after the first frost, which helped break down the harsh tannins and made the berries more usable. Clever medieval farmers learned to cheat this system by picking the berries early and freezing them themselves. Medieval life hack: put sloes in the coldest part of your stone house for 2 weeks and pretend winter came early. Mother Nature never knew the difference. While sloe was the secret ingredient in medieval spirits, another forgotten fruit became so associated with drinking establishments. Step into any pub called the Checkers, and you're actually walking into a piece of forgotten fruit history. The checker fruit from the wild service tree was once so important to medieval drinking culture that countless pubs and taverns were named after it. These small brown fruits, speckled with lighter checks or spots, were the secret ingredient behind some of the most popular medieval drinks. Before hops became common for flavoring beer, checkers gave drinks a unique tangy flavor and natural preservative qualities. Tavern keepers would add dried or fermented checkers to barrels of ale, extending their shelf life while adding a distinctive taste that medieval drinkers craved. Medieval drink menus were simple. We have checker ale that doesn't make you sick immediately, and regular ale that might. Choose wisely. The fruits look similar to small pears or apples, but have a completely different flavor profile. Slightly tart with hints of date and raisin when fully ripened. Like medlars, they needed to be bledded or partially decomposed before eating, a process that converted their harsh tannins into natural sugars. Many medieval villages had a special checker tree in the town square or near the local tavern. These trees served as community gathering spots, and during harvest season, the whole village would collect the fruits to make community drinks for celebrations and festivals. A medieval job application for tavern work probably read, "Must be able to lift heavy barrels, serve rowdy customers, and know the difference between slightly rotten fruit we use on purpose and actually rotten fruit." While checkers flavored drinks that brought communities together, another forgotten fruit helped medieval travelers survive lonely journeys. Hackberries are small, sweet fruits grown on trees so tough they could survive drought, floods, and even fires. Medieval travelers carried dried hackberries on dangerous journeys through mountains and deserts, treating them like natural energy bars that could sustain life when no other food was available. Medieval survival guides would basically read, Step 1, find a hackberry tree. Step 2, don't die. Step 3, thank the hackberry tree for Step 2. Many medieval villages planted these trees as living insurance policies against famine. Their deep root systems made them nearly impossible to kill, even during the worst drought years. The fruits were typically eaten fresh or dried. Some regions ground dried hackberries into a powder for nutritious drinks or to stretch flour supplies during hard times. Medieval disaster preparedness kit: one sword, one shield, and a pouch of hackberries. Two of these items might save your life, but only the hackberries were guaranteed to work. While hackberries helped travelers survive harsh journeys, another forgotten fruit was becoming increasingly rare even in medieval times. Mispilus fruits might win the award for most forgotten of all forgotten medieval fruits. This mysterious cousin of the common medlar confused even medieval farmers who couldn't decide if it was a separate fruit or just a weird variant. With its bizarre star-shaped calyx and unusual ripening process, Mispilus looked like something from another world. Medieval fruit identification went something like apple-shaped, apple, pear-shaped, pear, star-bottom brown thing that looks haunted. Let's call it Mispilus and back away slowly. The fruit was incredibly rare even in medieval times, grown mainly in specialized monastery gardens and noble estates. Unlike its more common medlar relative, Mispilus required specific soil conditions and careful tending, making it a status symbol for wealthy landowners who could afford expert gardeners. When properly ripened through bledding, controlled rotting, Mispilus developed a unique flavor profile described in medieval texts as honey wine with cinnamon. Its pulp was used in expensive desserts served at royal feasts. While Mispilus represented medieval luxury, the final forgotten fruit on our list was decidedly more common. Tiny, tart, and tough, crab apples would make modern apple lovers pucker in surprise. Yet these wild ancestors of our sweet supermarket apples were workhorses of medieval kitchens and farms. If modern apples are like spoiled rich kids who get everything handed to them, crab apples were their hardworking ancestors who walked uphill both ways in the snow. Too sour for eating fresh, crab apples shined when transformed through cooking. Their extreme tartness and high pectin content made them perfect for preserves and jellies. Medieval cooks mixed crab apple sauce with meat to cut through fatty dishes. The juice was fermented into a potent cider that kept well through winter. Even the wood was valuable, prized for its hardness and beautiful grain in tool handles. These 15 forgotten fruits reveal the ingenuity of medieval farmers who found value in every growing thing.